Hi everyone, my name is Aubrey and today I'm going to be doing my August and September wrap up. So I feel like at the beginning of 2020 I was actually having a pretty decent reading year until, the thing happened and I just kind of fell off of reading almost entirely. All I wanted to do was play Animal Crossing and curl up in bed and not really have to think about the state of the world. I've recently gotten back into it. Last month was a really good reading month for me, I think. So I wanted to talk about some of the books that I read in August, and then I also want to talk about some of the books that I read in September. So let's just get right into it. I don't know where the dust jackets for these are. I think I must have left them at my parents' house, but it's fine. This is Scarlet by Marissa Meyer. I read Cinder earlier this year, I think in May. And I really enjoyed it. It's a little bit younger than some of the YA that I typically read, but it was a lot of fun. It definitely kind of got me out of my reading slump. I think I read it in maybe 2 or 3 sittings. Like I read, the first few chapters in 2 different sittings, and then the majority of the book I read in 1 sitting. So I really, really enjoyed it. And I wanted to pick up the second book. That's Scarlet. And I read this in August. I enjoyed this one. Going into it, I thought that the books were more companion-y than they are. Every book follows a different fairy tale character. So Cinder, you're following Cinderella. And this one, you're following Scarlet, aka Little Red Riding Hood. And I didn't realize how much Cinder was still gonna be in this book. I thought that this book would be, entirely Scarlet's book, and that maybe we would see, Cinder, but that it would be through Scarlet's eyes only, and we would just carry on. You would sort of see the stories unfold through each book's specific protagonist's eyes. I'm not explaining this well. And that's not what I got. So the book is almost split down the middle, Scarlet and Cinder. Whereas the first book was pretty much all of Cinder. We got a few chapters with Emperor Kai, but mostly it was Cinder's point of view and Cinder's story. Like I said, this one was sort of split in half, and I think because of that, I sort of struggled to really connect with Scarlet the way that I connected with Cinder in the first book, because we just don't get as much of her. Then also I think that the romance in this was a little bit rushed, again because there just wasn't kind of enough page time to really develop it. Like this book is, I want to say, almost the same size as Cinder was. I'm not sure. But it's 450 pages. So I don't know. I did still enjoy this a lot. I did carry on with the series, which I'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, I think this one suffered maybe a little bit by being too short. Like I said, I wasn't really connecting with Scarlet as a character. I mean, I liked her. She's really spunky. She's really fierce. But I didn't sort of get enough of her in the book to really kind of form a connection with her. And I think I was also thrown off because Scarlet's story and Cinder's story, at first it's not very clear how they are going to connect, so they feel almost like 2 separate books that got smushed into one book. It just kind of threw me off, but again, I did enjoy this. So the next books that I read in August were actually a bunch of graphic novels. And those would be the Lock and Key series by Joe Hill. I'm holding up my iPad because that's how I read these. And I read all 6 volumes in the series. And these were absolutely wonderful. I was not expecting to love this series as much as I did. I didn't know anything about it going into it. I know it's horror. I know, Joe Hill is Stephen King's son. I'm a big fan of Stephen King, but I actually hadn't read any Joe Hill before this. So I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know that much about the story, other than knowing that it's about kind of a creepy house with a bunch of magic keys in it. The reason I decided to pick this up at that particular time was because my family wanted to watch the Netflix show, but I wanted to read the series first. And I'm so glad that I did. It just absolutely stole my heart, which sounds so weird to say about just like a horror graphic novel series. The characters, the things that they go through, they just felt so real to me. I will say that this is not a series for, I don't know, the faint of heart. It is gruesome at times, incredibly gruesome at times. There are disturbing things that happen. So I would definitely check out any trigger warnings on the series just to see what you can handle. But I think if you're a horror fan, these are absolutely amazing. And I think if you're a fan of just good storytelling in general, that these are amazing. I highly recommend them. Again, if you can handle that kind of level of bad stuff happening. Personally, I thought that the first volume was the worst in terms of like just really gruesome stuff and really disturbing stuff. I found that the volumes after the first one were not nearly as bad. Bad stuff still happens, but I think we really kind of settled into more of a creep factor than just straight up gruesome horror. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. I cried at the end. I bawled my eyes out at the end, which again, you wouldn't really expect, or at least I wasn't expecting thinking about this series, but it was just so good. The characters are so good. The storytelling is impeccable. At first, I wasn't really a big fan of the art style, but it really grew on me, and I think that it really works well for the story. Yeah, I just absolutely loved it. Highly recommend. So the last book that I read in August was an audiobook, and it was a nonfiction, so I don't know how many of you are going to be interested in this, but I read Fiber Fueled by Will Bolswick. It's a book about digestive health. It's incredibly well researched. There's lots of science to back up everything that he talks about in this book, and how to optimize your microbiome. Again, I'm not sure how many of you will be interested in this, but I absolutely would recommend it to just about anybody, simply for the fact that, again, it's very well researched. I think he said that he cites over 500 studies in this book, which is very impressive. And I just think everybody should learn more about their own bodies and how to stay healthy. I just think that's really important. So, if this sounds interesting to you, I would absolutely check it out. I loved the audiobook. The author narrates it himself, and he was really funny, and it was very lighthearted. There wasn't too much jargon. I thought it was really digestible. No pun intended. So, the first book that I read in September was Hush. It's a Batman comic, and this one is really fun because it involves almost all of the sort of classic Batman villains. Pretty much all of them make an appearance in this graphic novel. Somebody has been sort of screwing with Batman, toying with him, and Batman has to sort of figure out who's been doing all of these weird things. I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I think that this is a good graphic novel if you're not that familiar with Batman. Maybe you want to get into like superhero comics or Batman comics. I thought the author did a really nice job sort of explaining things that, people who may not be familiar with the Gotham world or the Batman storyline needed to know. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Next book that I read in September was an audiobook, and that was Lovecraft Country by Matt Ruff. I really enjoyed this one. It is kind of a horror anthology where the stories are all connected in some way and then they kind of tie together at the end. I think the first story was my favorite. I also enjoyed, there's one with like a haunted house, and I really enjoyed that one. But going into it, I didn't know that it was an anthology. I thought it was just, a novel. And, this is just kind of a personal thing, but I tend to get fatigued with short stories one after another. And I could definitely feel that with this book. I think by, maybe the second to last story, I was kind of ready for it to be over. But again, I think that's just kind of my own thing. So I will say all of the characters that we follow in this book are African American, and it takes place during the Jim Crow law era of time in the South. I found to be really, really interesting, and I also felt like some of the interactions between, the main characters and white antagonists were perhaps even more frightening than some of the sort of supernatural things going on. But I do just want to point out that Matt Ruff is a white man, and I didn't know that going into the book. And, I'm not saying that white authors cannot write characters of different races than them. Of course, I'm not saying that, but I do think that white authors need to be careful writing books about the Black experience, or, any minority's experience when they themselves haven't had that experience. And there are a lot of those themes in the anthology of, what it was like to be Black during a Jim Crow era. So I would just take that with a grain of salt, I guess. Reading the book, I would just kind of take all of that with a bit of a grain of salt. But yeah, I did really enjoy this, and I am excited to watch the HBO show. I think it's on HBO. The next book that I read was Cress. Again, I don't know what happened to my dust jackets. I think they're at my parents' house. This is the third book in the Lunar Chronicles, and I really, really enjoyed this one. I think this one is my favorite so far. I just really, really enjoy Cress as a character. I think she's a hoot. I really like her and Thorn and their dynamic. I thought this one was just a really fun time. It's 550 pages, but I read it really fast. Again, I feel like poor Scarlet barely gets any screen time in this book. She's barely in it. She has a few chapters, but I just felt kind of bad for her. But overall, I did really, really enjoy this one. I'm excited to carry on with the series. I think I will probably be reading Winter this winter. There's a bunch of spooky books that I want to read in October and some other sort of fall-themed books I want to read in November, so I think winter is going to be pushed back a little bit, but I am excited to get to it. It's quite a big book. I looked at the page count and it's like over 800 pages, I think, so yeah, but I think the series is really, really fun. I think these would make such good movies. I don't know, I feel like when I'm reading them, I just keep imagining like what they would look like in a movie. I don't know. Then I read the original by Brandon Sanderson and Mary Robinette Kowal. And this is a novella set in this futuristic world where a woman wakes up and finds out basically that she is a clone and that her original self has committed a murder, and so she is appointed the task of finding her original and killing her original, and if she succeeds, then she gets to take the place of her original. I thought this was really good. Not only is it a good audiobook, I really enjoyed, like, they have music and sound effects, but I thought it was done really well. It's not distracting, it really adds to the story. But the story itself, I just was really enthralled with. I thought it was such an interesting concept, and I loved the execution, liked the character. I think the way that they did this was that Brandon Sanderson had the idea and then he kind of plotted the whole story, and then Mary Robinette Kowal took over and actually wrote the story, and I absolutely loved her writing style. Absolutely loved her writing style. I thought it was so well done. I felt very in the moment, very connected to our main character and her objective. And there's kind of this like peeling away of kind of a mystery and also just like the reality of this world that they live in. I just really, really loved this. I thought it was really good. And again, it's a novella. It's not that long. You could probably knock this out in a day. I really, really loved this. And then the last book that I read in September was actually a reread for me, and that was The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. I read this book 2 years ago, actually in the same month 2 years ago, which is funny. I saw that on my Goodreads. I was like, I was sorely disappointed with this book the first time I read it. I was in a really bad reading slump, and I had heard just only good things about this. So many of my favorite booktubers have given this book 5 stars. I don't think I've seen anything lower than a 4-star for this book, and I just thought that I was going to love it. I thought it was going to be the perfect book to pull me out of my reading slump, and I have to say that I was just immediately really put off by Brandon Sanderson's writing in this. A lot of people call Brandon Sanderson's writing style simple. I would agree. I think this reads at a really low reading level. Like vocabulary and sentence structure, I just almost sometimes felt like I was reading a middle grade book, which is fine. I love middle grade. I read middle grade. Like, I think that's fine. I just wasn't expecting it in an adult book, I guess. I hadn't ever read an adult book written this way before, and I just found it really off-putting. And I struggled with this book so hard. I think the first time I read it, it took me like 3 months or longer to read. It took me forever. I felt like the writing style kept me from connecting to the characters. Like, the characters all just smile and sigh and frown and roll their eyes a lot. They just do that all the time, and I really struggled with it. I was very disappointed with it. I set it down and I didn't continue on with the series. But I hear that the last book in the series is supposed to kind of blow my mind. Everybody raves about the trilogy as a whole, and I do still want to give the trilogy a try. So I decided to give this a reread because, like I said, it's been 2 years, and I just kind of wanted to give it another chance since I'm no longer in a reading slump. In fact, I have really been enjoying reading lately, and I have to say I did enjoy it more the second time around. I think that, this often happens with me with things that are really, really hyped up. Sometimes you can enjoy it better on the second time around because you can appreciate it for what it is as opposed to being disappointed with what it's not. So yes, I was able to kind of look past the writing style and the repetitiveness of the writing style, kind of see the book that I think everybody else sees. I think that Brandon Sanderson is an incredible story structuralist, which is maybe a word I just invented, but as in I think that he structures his plots really, really well. I think that he was incredibly meticulous about giving us those little nuggets of details that were going to pay off really well later. I like that, again, he was so meticulous about his magic system. I like that there is this really concrete, hard magic system in this world. I'm assuming that everybody knows what Mistborn is about. This is such a popular series. But if you don't know, it's like this dystopian fantasy world where there is this seemingly all-powerful Lord Ruler who has ruled for thousands and thousands of years. When the Lord Ruler ascended the throne or whatever, or ascended to power, he created the nobility, which were people that helped him rise to power, and then all of their descendants, and then there was like everybody else, and those are the Ska. And so, you know, the nobility obviously hold a lot more power in this society, and some of them have been gifted with these, like, you know, magical powers of allomancy where they can control metals. So we're following two Mistborns in this book where they both can control all of the different aspects of allomancy. And yeah, I mean, he explains it in the book, but I digress. I assume you know. So yeah, I thought that the world building was really good in this book. I thought that the story structure was really well done. I liked, because it was a second reread and I knew what was going to happen at the end, I liked all of the little details hinting at the twist. And I also really appreciated that both of our main characters are not perfectly good. Like, I really appreciated that Kelsier wasn't just like this perfectly just sort of pure character. So he will kill nobility just because they're nobility, and he will kill Ska who work for nobility because in his mind those Ska have turned their backs on their own people, even if it means that they have kind of moved up in the world, they're making a better life for themselves, but he feels no regret, he feels no sense of wrong about killing people that he deems to be bad. I liked that moral grayness, you know, I liked that he wasn't just kind of this like perfectly pure character. Also liked that Vin herself comes with a lot of baggage. I like that she's been through a lot and she doesn't trust very easily, and I'm excited to see kind of where her arc goes, because I found her a bit more of an interesting character the second time around. So yeah, overall I enjoyed this better. I would definitely recommend it for people who are new to fantasy or new to adult fantasy. Again, the writing style being what it is does make it accessible. It is really easy to read. It's very digestible. Yeah, that was Mistborn, and I will be continuing with the series. I have a bunch of like spooky books that I want to read in October, but I think that I will probably be reading The Well of Ascension like a little bit every day, just to kind of stay in the world and not forget stuff. So, okay, well, that is my wrap up. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of some of these books in the comments if you've read them. And if not, let me know something that you read this month that you really enjoyed. Subscribe if you want to see more from me, and like this video if you liked it. Thank you so much. Bye.